Hey lovelies, I got back last night from the Northwest Tarot Symposium, and there were some just amazing experiences at the conference, mostly at the level of connecting with individuals, although some really wonderful content. I talked a little bit in my last video about two of the talks. I also super enjoyed some of the Sunday sessions. Ethne gave a really vivacious and entertaining discussion about backgrounds in tarot that was just really clear and important and on point. And I was reading cards with the people after that, and people kept returning to, well, if we just did the sort of the color magic that Ethne was talking about. I mean, it really sunk in and became an instant tool for people to use. And there was a wonderful talk on neuroscience by this practitioner up in Seattle way, who is both a neuroscientist at Puget Sound, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but I'll link his website below, and who is also a tarot practitioner, talking about how what our brains are doing on tarot. So that was really cool. And it's just, you know, hanging out with the peeps. One of the things about going to any tarot symposium or conference, any kind of new age or metaphysical event, is shopping, of course. And I actually didn't buy very much. I bought 2 decks. I mean, that's barely anything, right? And then found 2 decks on the potlatch table. There were actually some amazing, I mean, people are freaking amazingly generous. So there were a number of things that ended up on the potlatch table, the swap table, that you're just like, are you kidding me? There was a Thoth Greenie that ended up there, that it was a little bit water damaged, but otherwise completely intact. There was a copy of Sacred India Tarot. Now, I own both of those, so I just was like, you know, this is a beautiful thing, and I will not touch these beautiful things. Someone gave another out-of-print deck, which the person who received that may well do a video of her own, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. And what else? There was something, a Rumi Tarot, which is also a deck that I own. It's beautiful. I mean, just like, you guys, this is so generous. The things that I did pick up were a little bit less, you know, kind of unicorny. I picked up this deck I'd never heard of by an artist named Carrie Louise, called the Starry Cauldron Tarot. And it's just a beautiful kind of watercolory deck. I've read a tiny bit with it at NWTS. Really simple, really very pretty backs. You know, it reminds me of, I don't own this deck, but is it the Lily White Tarot? Is that what I'm thinking of? What am I thinking of? Look at that magician. Lovely. Very simple. Yeah, 10 of Wands. Very evocative. The High Priestess. Her wizards are kings, and warriors are knights. I love that 9 of Pentacles. Very simple. So this is a deck that I am sure I will read with. I love that Strength card. Yeah, so Carrie Louise's Starry Cauldron Tarot. I will do I think it came out in 2017, so it's been, you know, it's an older deck now, 5 years old. I don't even know if it's still in print. But I will do, if it is still in print, I will do a review of it when I've had a chance to work with it some, which will be after the Drop 'em 78 challenge, by the way. And I'm going to do another dueling deck dialogue in a minute. People have been asking me, you know, given the Drop 'em 78 challenge, which starts October 15th, that's Saturday. I'm filming this on Monday, the 11th. Like, Esther, have you narrowed your choices at all? Because I've been posting a lot of videos. And no, actually, I've quite deliberately expanded my choices. And my plan, I did this last year. Danielle Christmas was saying, were you going to do this again this year? Yes. A Bachelorette party for saying goodbye to our polyamorous tarot ways, right before the Drop 'em 78 challenge. So I will be posting sometime between now and Saturday a video in which I will be saying goodbye to the decks that I wish I was practicing with toward the end of the year. And I will also at that point introduce my deck, my choice of a deck for the Drop 'em 78 challenge. And I don't mean to be coy here. I'm not like, this isn't like I'm holding back the secret information. I don't yet know what deck I am going to use. And I'm still doing the doing the audition process, the dueling dialogue deck process, deck dialogue process for this challenge. So I've got another one of those coming up. But anyway, Starry Cauldron Tarot, which I will end up playing with, but after the challenge. It's not a contender for the challenge. I'm not going to be using that brand new deck for the Drop 'em 78 challenge. Al Swartz's The Wooden Tarot. I showed this in my last video. I think I flipped through it a little bit. This is a deck that I also picked up on the potlatch table. This deck is definitely in, I think it's still in print. These are the backs. It's a deck that I owned at one time 5 years ago. Got creeped out by all of the eyes. It was, at the time, it just was a little too unnerving for me where I was in my life and with tarot. And now I think, you know, it may still be a little unnerving, but I'm less weirded out by, and it has a happy squirrel who happens to be the Fool. And that's not a squirrel at all, is it? It's a mouse. Okay. Yes, I know this deck incredibly well, as you can see. Oh, it's very sweet, but then it's also kind of like, it's just a little unnerving, right? All of these headless critters, and then the king figures, which are gods, right? With these headless bodies and these kind of Masonic sort of eyes and triangles, and yeah. I've had, actually, at NWTS, I did a couple of readings with this that were actually kind of interesting. So I will be playing with that after the Drop 'em 78 challenge, and I will let you know what I think thereupon, the Wooden Tarot. So those were both potlatch decks. Not a potlatch deck. I went to the Tarot Garden to their table, and I picked up a deck I've never heard of before. This is Leonard Jim Narcisso's Tarot van der Steel. That's this Dutch artistic style that was like, you know, 19 teens, I think, 1917-ish, I think. And they were all about primary colors and lines and total simplicity. So Leonard Jim Narciso, who is the guy who did the Vanessa Tarot, the guy who did the Maria Celia Tarot, the guy who, what is the one, I didn't get a chance to back it on Kickstarter. I missed the Kickstarter, but the Deviant, I can't remember the name of it. I'll put the link below. He's fantastic, this fantastic, wide-ranging artist. He did this. He has wrought this deck that is this play on Marseille Tarot, using this Dutch sort of Cubist style, a style that's all about, as I understand it, it's sort of a predecessor of the Bauhaus movement. And I think it's all about avoiding the ways in which art covers up the truth by scaling art back to its most basic elements of line and primary color. Look at that moon. And then the titles are all in Dutch because it's a Dutch artistic style. The world, look at this. It's just, I think it's delightful. And actually I also, I read with this deck at NWTS too, and had a couple of really fun, interesting readings. There's something about the figure within the figure and the way that these are hard to read, background and foreground meld together, but you know, there you've got the Six of Cups. It's nonetheless legible Wheel of Fortune. Anyway, Judgment. Love it. So, the Van de Steel Tarot. Oh, here's what he says. Tarot Van de Steel is a 78-card tarot deck which is inspired by the imagery of an old tarot pattern called Tarot de Marseille, as well as the body of work of an early 1900s Dutch art movement called de Stijl. I think that means, does that mean the style? I don't know. I'm guessing. The art of the deck walks a tightrope balance between the figurative imagery of the Tarot de Marseille and the geometric abstractions of the de Stijl movement. Yeah. Anyway, super interesting deck. Never had seen it before, didn't know that he had done anything like this, and now it's in my hot little hands. Okay, there's that. And then the final thing I got, I am not an oracle person, but I love Marie Bento. I love the Lua Tarot, and you know, she is she's changing her life. She's probably moving out of the country, onto amazing dreams and beautiful things, and she may not be producing decks moving forward. So I had to get a copy of the Divine Muses Oracle, which I've admired, but never owned, because again, I don't read oracle cards. But this deck, I mean, first of all, like everything she does, it's impeccably produced. This is that wonderful cardstock that the folks at Shuffled Ink use, and Shuffled Ink is, I think, the same cardstock or publishing company that Artisan Tarot uses. It's American, as far as I know. I think they may outsource some of their printing, but it's an American company, and they do beautiful, beautiful flexy, bendy, smells amazing, and this really fine linen. So, you know, I think many of you know this oracle deck. It's about as perfect an oracle deck as one can find. So I think I'm just going to have to start learning how to work with an oracle deck. I mean, start learning how to, I mean, this is the whole point of oracle decks, is that there's a greater flexibility for using them. But that often for me is a little off-putting. I like the structure. I'm Hierophant girl. I like structure, right? I'm a Zen Buddhist, you know. I like sitting upright, cross-legged on the floor, and I like the ways in which, sorry for all this noise in the background, the ways in which the structure of tarot and its deep roots in the wisdom traditions of Western and Eastern culture, its deep roots in an understanding of the elemental composition of life, in its understanding of number and of progression and succession, its deep understanding of what a spiritual ascent might look like. That structure of the 78 is incredibly powerful. So oracle decks for me have always been like, you get rid of the structure. But this is an oracle deck that has structure built in through its dedication to the muses. And it just, look at that. It also has Marie Bento's wonderful, light-hearted collage style, her eye for detail, her sense of color, her commitment to design, and her uncompromising relationship to production qualities. I love the Queen of Roses. Love it. Anyway, Divine Muses Oracle, which I know many of you know and cherish, and now it's in my hot little hand. So those are my acquisitions from those are my acquisitions from Newts. Finish your sentence, Esther. Yes. And now onto a dueling deck dialogue at 14 minutes in. All right, we'll make this quick if we can. So these decks, I got to thinking about, as I've been doing this work with these deck dialogues, where I'm kind of opening myself up to the imagery and idiom of individual decks, trying to discern what deck is resonating for me at this point in time, what deck might be the right partner for me in the Drop 'em 78 challenge, where we commit to one deck one day, one card at a time. And one of the categories that has been floating in the back of my mind is those decks which foreground things like place, not person, not figure, but setting, and how powerful that is. So I have 3 decks, each of which is a huge heavy hitter on the topic of place. One is well known to many of us, the Majestic Earth Tarot, J.D. Hildegard Hinkel's deck, using the art of the sort of Sturm und Drang, this sort of moody, powerful imagery from the 19th century of these landscape images. Most of them don't have any human figures, or don't have any really pronounced human figures, but some of them are like Caspar Friedrich's, this called The Wanderer, is that right? This image, which is so famous as a image for romanticism, for that moment of history that produces the likes of, a Goethe or a Schelling or a Schiller. Okay, so I'm looking here. I've got, these are all little catawampus. Why are they catawampus? Here we go. So this deck. And part of what makes each of these decks so powerful to read is knowing specificity of place and setting. Like with this deck, it's a fine art deck, so knowing what these images are taken from, what the painting is called. J.D. Hildegard Hinkel is such an amazing curator, like she's the artist, creator behind the Tarot of Delphi, right? And that is so profoundly a deck that is enhanced by not just the images on the cards, but by what we can know about those images. Like, oh, this is an image of, Judith right after she, blah, blah, blah. So this deck too, the guidebook is really important. But for these deck dialogues, I'm not resorting to the guidebook. I'm wanting to get a first impression hit off of the cards. And none of the decks that I'm talking about today are decks I've worked with so extensively that I know off the bat what they're about. And this, we've had a jumper, like I tend to have when I'm doing this. The deck is really wanting to tell me stuff. So the 10 of Clouds. Swordsy. And we've got some keywords here. Culmination, dreary, conclusion, drama, right? 10 of Air. Yeah, I think that image is pretty straightforward. So are you saying to me, a woman who pulled this charm today, the 3 of Swords, this is the second time. I've only had these charm cast tarot tiles for like a couple weeks. This is already the second time I've pulled the 3 of Swords as my talisman. Are you telling me you're going to help me find the spaciousness of that 10 of Swords moment, the spaciousness of the ego death that this is, the death that the 10 of Swords is all about, that huge, look at that cathedral, that ruined, what a fucking brilliant card. So are you telling me you're going to help me find the spaciousness of the loss and ego death that this card represents, the way it opens up vistas? Is that what you're telling me? And the deck, she says in response, and I have a feeling that I need to pull both the bottom and the top. I'm going to start with the top. The 8 of Stones. Okay. Productivity, labor, handiwork, and craft. This is all about, what we can build together, right? The human and the landscape. So yeah, you're saying, yeah, we're going to build stuff together. Okay. Okay. That was the top card. What's the bottom card? Ooh, upside down. The 5 of Clouds. Yeah. And there's going to be loss. Like, don't get too cheery. Like, this is a stormy deck. Don't get too cheery. It's not going to be just like, yeah, here we are, we're making stuff. We're building. Yeah. The spaciousness that this deck offers, I think, requires a sense of loss. Is that correct? Creature of trees. The creature, is the creature the page? I think the creature is the page. Let me just see. Nope. I'm pretty sure the creature is 10 of trees. Maybe the creature is the, oh, the creature, yeah. Okay, I'm totally wrong. You can see how much I've worked with this deck. Creature is the queen, right? Yeah, so the queen of water. Is that right? No. It's trees wands. Trees must be wands. Yeah. Yes, fire. Which is complicated, right? I don't know why I was thinking water. It's complicated that the trees would be the suit of fire, but it's what burns, and I love that actually. So you know, this way in which, and I think this is really true about the wands as a suit. You know, the relationship between, I often like to think about the complementary suits. So you've got fire and earth and air and fire and earth and air and water, right? And the way in which, you know, the fuel and the flame go together. So there we go. Queen of Wands with all the bears. Protective, practical, formidable, carnal. Okay? You're going to help me be this. If I can learn your imagery, right? Having gotten both creature and tree incorrectly. This is a deck I'm really longing to work with. So I'm just saying, this deck is a serious contender for me. I'm longing to get to know it. And it is, the cardstock is wonderful. And it's beautiful. And it's challenging, but it's not overwhelmingly challenging. It's not like trying to take up Thoth challenging. Okay. That was one. Majestic Earth. The deck that is super, probably the most challenging place-oriented deck that I own or have ever seen is the Tyldwick Tarot. And this is the first edition. I have both the first and the second edition. And this deck, what makes this deck challenging, so the premise of it, if you don't know this deck, these are the backs. It's fucking gorgeous. And the second edition is, there are things I like about the first edition better. It's the cardstock's a little more bendy. The gilding on the second edition is this incredibly beautiful bronze, and the imagery is a little bit, in most of the cards, a little bit more saturated and slightly more contrasty, so it's a little easier to read. This deck is gorgeous. The premise, I started to say, the premise is that you're walking through a mansion, that this is a mansion, a depopulated mansion, and the entire 78 archetypes of tarot are played out in rooms and scenes throughout the mansion. And sometimes it's very easy to read, and other times, partly because it's like a palimpsest, like the images are laid over on top of each other, textures and colors, partly because it's hard to read for that reason, and partly because it's elusive, like there are allusions in the imagery to things that you kind of wonder, like, what is that an image of, and what is that, how is that meaningful? Sometimes it can be impossible to read. Like, you're like, what am I looking at? And there was a chat, whatever you call it, a line, a thread, there you go, on the old Eclectic forum, that web-based chat program, the resource program for tarot, on the Tyldwick, where most, if not all of the cards, I think all of the cards, there's something written on them. It was like a study group. But not all of the cards have really helpful descriptions, but Neil Lovell, is that his name? Neil Lovell? Yeah, I think I'm remembering his name correctly. Why is my brain freezing? Anyway, the creator of the Tyldwick, who passed away a few years ago, he never wrote a guidebook. He never offered explanations. He left it up to us to figure out. Okay, Tyldwick Tarot. What do you have to show me? And it's upside down. And the answer is the world. And this is pretty straightforward in that we have fire, and these are platonic solids, but we've got we've got earth and fire, and in the middle what looks like a globe, maybe. And then this mantle that has Shiva. Is that Shiva? Creator, destroyer in the center. Okay, you want to show it all, right? Creation, destruction. You want to show it all to me. And make me work a little bit. But actually in this card you're not making me work too much. Oh, there we've got the four figures at the top. So this is a pretty clearly elusive card. The figures from the original Waite-Smith or even the Mousset imagery of the world. Yeah. Okay. So this card suggests you're saying, look, it's not going to be so hidden that you can't get it, and I'm going to give you it. I'm going to give you the world. Am I right? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Three of coins. And these are upside down. I mean, on the one hand, you're saying, and we're going to work together on this. I can't really see again. This is that palimpsest, that way in which these cards really cover the imagery. It's like wallpaper on top of wallpaper on top of wallpaper, but we've got something growing, a tree growing with, are these fruits? I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but you're promising me some collaborative assistance here, yeah? The fruit growing in the tree, perhaps. That there is a harvest that can be found. Is that I can reap a harvest here? Is that what you're saying? And upside down too, but we have strength, fortitude. And this is a card that I've studied a little bit before. I love the lion who is the water spout here, and this is a pool. You can sort of see the sides of the pool, and this little bird, right? This little bird, undaunted by the great spigot of the lion and this possibility of having a drink. And it looks like there's almost like shadows of other birds in the water. So how do we stand our ground? How do we enact fortitude, which in this deck is 11. And I want to be like the bird and get to know the ferocity of that lion, which here is just providing the water in which I can bathe, the water I can drink. Okay, I think this is a pretty hopeful reading for working with this deck, saying that you can really give it all to me, and we will work together, and promising a kind of experience, a strengthening and enlivening and nourishing experience. So that's the Tyldwick Tarot. And this is this is the Two of Swords. Isn't that beautiful? The bird having flown its its coop, a sense of freedom and yet still lingering by the birdcage. Okay. The last of my place-based decks is the Augenblick Tarot by Sharon Loftis. Really, I snagged, this is the second edition, I snagged one of the last copies of the second edition. I was incredibly lucky to get it. It will never be produced again, and it's beautiful. These are the backs, right? These are all based on, I guess, late 19th and early 20th century photographs in the Library of Congress. And Augenblick means an instant, a moment, blink of an eye. And so these are all sort of snapshots of life. And Shannon has chosen these to represent the archetypes of tarot. So again, place-based. And again, this is a deck. It would be great if the Tyldwick had a good guidebook that explained the imagery, but part of the idea of the Tyldwick is you need to go through that palimpsest, through those layers, and unlayer the meaning yourself. With this deck, the guidebook is super helpful. It tells you the source of the images, and that source information can often help you read the more meaning into the image than you would otherwise. Although you can read this intuitively, just like I was doing with the Majestic Earth. Okay, the Augenblick Tarot. What do you have to show me? Page of Cups. Yeah. You're gonna shelter me somewhat, right? So that I can make this little journey, but this sense of being really grounded in intuition and the spaciousness of this landscape. Oh, this is beautiful. I love that he's, what is that, portage? Is that what that's called? When you carry, I don't know anything. I love it. Okay, so you're saying you're going to help me be the Page of Cups. You're going to help shelter me, but for a little bit of a journey, walking on earth, but there's water implied. We're going to have a chance to dive. Is that what you're saying? Or maybe a chance to celebrate, to find, oh, this is such a restful and beautiful, to find, to rest in my vineyard, to settle myself, right? To find some ease and some companionship. This feels like a place I want to be. Are you saying you're going to give me a place, the place that I want to be, a place to rest, a place to find companionship? Or maybe not. Maybe there's going to be a little bit more swordsiness to it than that. This is an interesting, this doesn't immediately read Five of Swords to me, except that there's figures in the foreground, figures in the background, a sense of something having concluded, having had to cross the waters, and yet being on this dry bed, a sense of some past. That the landscapes here might bear with them a sense of loss and having had to go across. Okay. So it's not all verdant. It's not all verdant and lush and plush and restful. You're gonna take me some distance. I'm having the strong sense that I should shuffle one more time and just test that hypothesis. Am I missing something here? Am I getting it? Am I missing it? Am I getting it? Tell me what I need to know. Okay. Message heard. Okay. Death. Transformation. Loss. These are all actually snapshots of the past after all. So something has been lost. And you're going to take me through that landscape as well. Okay, there's going to be some some sense of ancestral work in this as when I was looking at the relative tarot, and yeah. Fair enough. And the Lua tarot. Fair enough. Okay. So that's a lot of stuff. This has been a long video. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of these decks. If you think any one of these would stand up for me to the 78-day challenge of Drop 'em 78. As always, thank you so much for your practice.